Hello everyone, it's Melanie here with Vintage Studio. I'm so glad you dropped by today. I'll be making a cute little birthday card called Best Fishes. It will be a slightly dimensional card, and I'll be using the Stamp and Cut set from Hero Arts. Now the Hero Arts set contains both the stamps and the dies, so it's a good value for your money. These are the papers I'll be using, as well as this Hanging Dots embossing folder by Park Lane, and a few inks, and that's it for today. So this is where we'll start with our card, 4 by 5.5 inches, and this Hanging Dots embossing folder. I'm going to simply place the cover of my card, the front side of my card, in the embossing folder and run that through my Sizzix Texture Boutique. This is a little machine that I bought when I first started card making, and I just absolutely love it. It's held up so well over the years. It's perfect for these small embossing folders, and you can see how easy it is to use, and voila, what great dimension to the front of our card. This is a great starting point. Next, I'll be using my mini Misty stamping platform with a couple of pieces of colored cardstock. Now, I suggest using a stamping platform for this fishbowl because it is cut out in the middle, so you will only be stamping the outer perimeter, which makes the stamp a little less stable than a solid stamp. So by using the platform, it holds your stamp completely isolated and what you need for a cutout stamp image like the fishbowl. The Hero Art stamps are great quality. You can see I get a good impression with just one stamp. And I'll be using a few markers just to add a little more character to my cards. I'm shading around the scalloped edge of my fishbowl and around the sides and along that little bottom part of the fishbowl. Now you don't have to do this. I'm just doing this because I have limited colors on my card this week, and I just think these little details add a lot of character. So again, just simply going around adding some shading here and there. I'm also going to shade those goldfish with a little darker color of orange, and leaving some natural highlights. Don't color in the whole thing, just add a little shading and shadows where you think it looks great. This is totally up to you how you want to do this. I did a little bit on the faces and the fins, and then I'm going to come back with the fine end nib of this marker and add some scales using a little bit of small backward C's. Again, you don't have to do this. It's just adding a little more detail than you normally would have. The last thing I'm going to do is use those couple of shades of brown down there for my sand and gravel at the bottom of my fishbowl. Now I'll add a little shading just at the bottom, and then again I'll flip it over to the finer nib tip of this marker, and I'm going to just add dots to simulate the gravel. 2 shades, and I want to make sure I leave some of that blue showing through because I think that makes it look more three-dimensional. You see how quickly this goes? You can do it, you can leave this out, just make it your own. That's what art's all about, is what you think it should look like and what you enjoy doing. So do your own thing. This is just my version of dealing with these stamps. Now I'm going to come over for the seaweed with this Distress Oxide ink. This is peeled paint. I will do one large one, and then I'm just going to ink up half of it for the second and third branches. And then I'll move on to the Distress Ink and Tubble Glass for the oxygen bubbles that will be coming out of the fish's mouths. Just going to add a set of bubbles a little lower and a little higher, and that will help me when I'm placing my fish later. Next, I move on to the dies. And this is why I used colored cardstock. These dies will leave a little bit of border around your stamped image, so if you were to work on white cardstock, you would have a white border, even if you colored in your fishbowl and your little goldfish. So by starting out stamping on the colored cardstock, I don't have a white border after I've die cut. So I kind of take care of that by using colored cardstock to begin with. I want to add a little more detail here, so I'll be bringing over Recollections Glitz. This is like a glittery little glitz, and I'm going to add that in little dots on my gravel. And then I'll add it to the oxygen bubbles and a little bit on the scales of my goldfish, because I think goldfish are naturally very reflective. So I'm going to give them a little bit of sheen and shine because they're the stars of the show. Now the thing to know about this glitz is that it does take about 30 to 40 minutes to completely dry. So after you get this applied where you want it, set these pieces aside to dry and then come back to them after about 30 minutes. I'll use a little scrap acetate for my fish bowl to give it a glass-like look. So I'll run that through my Sizzix Big Shot with the same die that I cut out the stamped fish bowl, and that gives me the glass look that I'm going for. Next, I'm moving on to the sentiment, and I decided to put that on some yellow polka dot paper just to introduce a little more color to the front of my card. And then I will be using 2 oval dies out of my stash. This is not from the Hero Art set. This is out of my stash. Get those adhered together, and I'm putting that yellow polka dot over the orange layer, which is the same orange that I stamped the goldfish on, just to have some continuity of color across the front of my card. Here is my dried Recollections Glitz on my fish bowl, and there is my little acetate piece that will be going over the top as soon as I adhere my goldfish inside the bowl. So I'm using liquid adhesive for my goldfish, and then I'm going to come back with that Recollections Glitz and use that to adhere the acetate to the fish bowl. If I were to use my liquid glue adhesive, it would show through the acetate everywhere that I applied the glue. But by using the glitz, it will dry into that clear glittery color that I already have going on in my fish bowl, and you won't be able to tell that the acetate was adhered with this glitz. Now the only mistake that I made, and I want to share this with you so you don't make the same mistake, is it was fine to go around the perimeter of the fish bowl. That will never show once I have my acetate on there, but I should not have gone back over those oxygen bubbles. And I'll tell you why. Because when I adhere this acetate, it kind of squishes those bubbles out into a flatter bubble behind it. It's okay. It's just not what I preferred. So I need to set that aside to dry as well. Excuse me. Now moving on, I used a little stripe mat that's 4 inches by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to use this at the bottom of my card to kind of bring some color, more color to the card, and also anchor that fish bowl so it has something to sit on and it doesn't appear to be just floating in the middle of my card. I like to squish my glue around with a brayer. That's all set, and then I'll get my sentiment put up there in the left-hand corner, and the reason I do that is kind of offsetting it because I don't want to cover up that beautiful hanging dots embossing that we did earlier on the front of our card. When I get to the fish bowl, I'm going to adhere that kind of to the right-hand side, and so those will be opposite each other. Now to give this a little more dimension, I'll be using foam tape and some score tape on the back. I'm using foam tape just in the center of my fish bowl because I want to curve this around to give it the real illusion of a curved fish bowl, a dimensional 3D fish bowl. But I don't want to add too much bulk, for mailing reasons, so that's why I'm using one layer of that foam tape in the middle, and then I'll come back with another strip in the middle so that the middle of my fish bowl is a little more rounded than the outer edges. Now here you can see I'm using score tape on all the edges of the perimeter, and I'll just use 2 little pieces on each end of that curved rim at the top because I don't want to adhere the whole top to my card. I want it to appear as if it's open, like a real fish bowl. So here I'm showing you, I'm just putting that on the very edges of that rim. And then I will remove that release tape from my foam tape and add this second piece, which makes it stand out a little more in the middle than it will on the edges. Just like this. And then I'm going to remove that release paper from my score tape and add some liquid adhesive so I can move it around a little bit on the front of my card before it really takes hold and adheres. So again, the liquid adhesive allows me to move this around. You see how I'm pushing it up towards the middle so that my fishbowl looks like it's rounded. The only thing I have to do here is use my reverse tweezers to help me hold down that little rim at the bottom until it's dry. And then the last step for the front of my card is to add this little sentiment that says "Stay Golden." I think that is so cute. Goes right along with our whole theme here. I'm going to stamp that right below my bowl, and that will complete our card for today. Here are some close-up looks on the card. I hope you can see. It's really kind of hard to see the dimension and the shine, but it's all in there. So it does look like I have a glass fish bowl. It is rounded in the middle, and then we've got that wonderful hanging dots texture going on in the background. I hope you enjoyed this video today. I hope you'll leave me some comments, subscribe to my channel, come back and visit me next week. I do weekly videos and I really enjoy sharing these with you. So I hope that you have a wonderful day and that you'll come back and see me next week. Happy crafting, everyone!